Hello, weary traveler, and welcome back to our quiet corner of the night. Tonight, we aren't just looking back at history, we are sinking into it, drifting down through layers of sapphire and indigo to a place the maps forgot long ago. We are going to the bottom of the world, to the sun-dappled ruins that aren't actually ruins at all, but a thriving, breathing garden beneath the waves. It is the dream of Atlantis, not as a tragedy, but as a sanctuary. Of course, scientifically speaking, at the depth we're going, your lungs would likely collapse into the size of walnuts, and the nitrogen in your blood would turn into a toxic cocktail. But let's ignore the crushing physics for the sake of a good nap, shall we? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and let me know how your day has really been. Your worries, your exhaustion, or even a tiny joy that made you smile. I'm here to truly listen and offer the most sincere, heartfelt advice I can. Now, turn off the lights. Take a deep, slow breath. Let your tiredness melt away and gently close your eyes. Let's drift together into tonight's dreamlike lands. And tomorrow morning, if you still remember, send me a message and tell me what you dreamed. The sensation begins not with sight, but with weightlessness. You are no longer standing on the solid, demanding earth with its gravity and its deadlines. Instead, you are suspended in the great embracing womb of the ocean. You have just tipped backward off the edge of a phantom boat, the splash a distant memory that dissolved into a swirl of silver bubbles, rising to a surface you can no longer see. Here, the silence is immediate and profound. It is a heavy velvet blanket that wraps around your ears, muffling the chaotic static of the world above until there is nothing left but the slow, rhythmic sound of your own breathing, a hollow, hypnotic whoosh in and a bubbling hiss out. You drift downward, sinking deeper into the gradient of blue. At first, the water is a bright, cheerful turquoise, pierced by shafts of sunlight that dance like golden spears through the waves. But as you descend, the gold fades. The turquoise deepens into a rich azure, then a majestic cobalt, and finally a twilight indigo that feels ancient and unending. The temperature drops, but it isn't cold. It is cool and refreshing, a balm against the feverish heat of a long day. The pressure builds against your skin, not as a crushing force, but as a firm, reassuring hug, holding you together, grounding you in this fluid space. You are entering the zone where the ocean begins to keep its secrets. A school of silver fish flashes past your peripheral vision, moving as a single liquid entity, their scales catching the last faint remnants of the sun. They do not fear you. They simply flow around you, parting like a stream around a stone and reforming just as effortlessly. You continue to sink, your descent controlled and agonizingly slow, a feather falling in a vacuum. As the light from above dwindles to a mere memory, a new kind of illumination begins to tickle your retinas. It is a soft, pulsating glow rising from the abyss below, not the harsh, artificial glare of a city, but a bioluminescent hum, gentle as a nightlight. This is the nitrogen narcosis settling in, the famed rapture of the deep. It softens the edges of your thoughts. The anxiety of what comes next dissolves into the simple, euphoric reality of what is now. You feel a strange, giddy sense of belonging, as if your body was always meant to be buoyant, suspended in this eternal blue dusk. Through the haze of the deep, shapes begin to materialize. They rise from the seabed like mountains, but they are too symmetrical, too purposeful to be mere geology. Massive spires of white stone pierce the gloom, spiraling upward like drilled shells. Bridges of translucent glass arc between them, glowing with a faint inner light that pulses in time with the ocean currents. You are approaching the outer perimeter. These are not the broken, moss-covered stones of a disaster movie. This is not a graveyard. The architecture is pristine, clean, and impossibly elegant. You drift closer to the seabed, your fins barely grazing the white sand that ripples in perfect Zen garden patterns. Ahead of you loom the great gates of the outer circle. They are titanic, carved from a single iridescent opal that shimmers with every color of the spectrum, even here in the dark. They stand 50 feet high, silent sentinels guarding the entrance to the crystal water gardens. There are no rusty hinges, no barnacles marring the smooth surface. The gates are open, just slightly, an invitation left ajar for the weary traveler who knows the way down. The water here feels different, thicker perhaps, or more charged with energy. It tingles against your exposed skin. You reach out a hand to touch the pillar of the gate as you float past, expecting cold stone, but it feels warm, vibrating with a low, thrumming frequency that resonates in your chest. You have crossed the threshold. The crushing weight of the ocean above seems to vanish entirely, replaced by the buoyant, magical atmosphere of the lost city. You are alone, yet you feel watched, not with hostility, but with a curious, ancient patience. The darkness of the open ocean is behind you now. Ahead lies the soft, beckoning glow of a civilization that never truly died, merely held its breath and waited for you to come home. Passing through those shimmering opal gates feels less like entering a city and more like slipping into a warm bath. The water on this side of the wall is distinctly different. It has a texture, a viscosity that caresses your skin like liquid silk. The current here doesn't push or pull, it supports. It holds you in a perfect, neutral buoyancy, so you no longer have to kick your legs or wave your arms to stay afloat. You simply exist, suspended in the amber of the moment. And as your eyes adjust to the soft, pervasive luminescence of the city, you realize that your arrival has been noticed. You are not alone. Emerging from the shadows of the spiraling towers are the locals, the coral sentinels. You might expect armed guards or suspicious border patrol agents demanding to see your papers, but Atlantis, at least this dream version of it, has long since moved past the need for bureaucracy. These figures glide toward you with an elegance that makes your own clumsy drifting look like a toddler learning to walk. They are tall, incredibly slender, with skin the color of polished pearl that seems to catch and refract the faint light of the ocean. They don't have tails exactly, but their legs move with such fluid unison that they might as well be one limb. They wear garments woven from something that looks like spider webs made of water, sheer, flowing fabrics that ripple around them like smoke dissolving into the sea at the edges. They stop a respectful distance away, 3 of them, forming a gentle semicircle around you. There is no aggression in their posture, only a profound stillness. You wait for one of them to speak, to bubble out a greeting or perhaps make a dolphin-like squeak. But of course, there is no sound here. Sound is a clumsy instrument for the surface world. Here, communication is a dance. The central figure, perhaps a head taller than the others, raises a long, slender hand. The movement is slow, deliberate, dragging a trail of faint phosphorescence through the water. They press a palm to their chest, directly where a heart would beat, and then extend the open hand toward you, palm up. It is a universal gesture, one that bypasses language entirely. I see you. I accept you. You are welcome here. You feel a strange compulsion to respond, to mimic the gesture. You awkwardly pat your own chest, likely knocking the wind out of yourself in the process, and extend a hand. A ripple of amusement seems to pass through the group, not mocking, but the kind of gentle indulgence one might show a puppy tripping over its own paws. Their eyes, large and dark like the deepest parts of the ocean, crinkle slightly at the corners. They turn, their movements synchronized as if they share a single consciousness, and motion for you to follow. You drift after them, falling into their slipstream. They lead you away from the gates and into the periphery of the city proper. Here, the wild sandy seabed defies terrestrial logic. You are floating over what can only be described as manicured lawns, but no grass grows here. Instead, the ground is carpeted in a thick, velvety layer of living moss that glows with a rhythmic pulse. It is a bioluminescent carpet, a sprawling field of neon teal and electric violet that breathes with the tide. As you glide closer to the ground, you notice that the vegetation reacts to your presence. With every phantom step you take, hovering just inches above the moss, the colors shift. The teal deepens to a warm magenta directly beneath you, creating a personal spotlight that tracks your movement. It's as if the earth itself is rolling out a red carpet, acknowledging your mass and your energy. The sentinels guide you along a path defined not by pavement, but by a change in the flora, a winding ribbon of star-shaped anemones that retract and bloom as you pass, bowing their flower-light heads in a silent wave. The air, or rather the water, is filled with floating particles of light, like dust motes dancing in a sunbeam, but these are tiny, distinct organisms, little jellies no bigger than a fingertip that drift lazily past your nose. One of the sentinels reaches out and gently cups one in their hand. It flares bright orange for a second, then settles back into a calm blue. They look back at you, offering a slight nod, encouraging you to appreciate the smallness of life here. You realize that this entire perimeter is designed to decompress the visitor. The colors are cool and soothing, the movements of the plants are hypnotic, and the silence is absolute, but for the rhythmic thrum, thrum, thrum of the city's distant heart. You are being scrubbed clean of the surface world's noise. The tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your jaw, it's all being drawn out of you, dissolved into the salt water. The sentinels don't look back often, trusting you to follow, their sheer robes trailing behind them like guidelines for you to grasp if you lose your way. But you won't lose your way. The path of anemones is clear, and the soft, inviting glow of the gardens ahead promises rest. You are no longer an intruder, you are a guest in the garden of deep time, and the tour has only just begun. The sentinels, your silent, pearlescent hosts, transition you seamlessly from the soft, living moss of the outer gardens into the primary residential avenues. This is where the true genius of Atlantean design asserts itself, whispering a profound truth about engineering that the surface world never quite grasped. You do not build against the ocean, you simply persuade it to grow with you. The wide lanes you now glide down are paved, as promised, with enormous interlocking tiles of smooth, polished abalone. These aren't just decorative, they are functional, shimmering surfaces that capture every stray photon of light and multiply it across the thoroughfare. The effect is mesmerizing. Below you, the pavement doesn't reflect light, it emits a shifting, iridescent internal fire, a ribbon of opal and emerald that guides your ray like a submerged galaxy. The polished stone is perfectly smooth, yet covered in faint, deliberate geometric etchings, circles within squares, and spirals that obey the golden ratio, guiding the flow of subtle undertows and making your buoyant movement feel effortless, almost assisted. The structures that line these avenues are the city itself, and they utterly defy the concept of a building. They look like massive hollowed-out pieces of intricate sea lace or crystallized petrified foam. There are no straight lines, no brutalist blocks of concrete. Every wall curves, every roof swells, every spire spirals upward and outward, mimicking the serpentine grace of a conch shell or the elegant fan of a deep-sea coral. The material is what they might call living stone, a bioengineered mix of calcium carbonate and luminous algae that grows slowly, layer by layer, responding to the environmental pressures. You pass what must be individual residences, massive domiciles that cradle pockets of stabilized air or simply exist as large illuminated chambers for the residents to drift within. The windows are not separate panes of glass, but seamless, thick sections of pure, stabilized crystal that were grown directly into the structure. Peering through one, you see not furniture in the human sense, but suspended beds woven from glowing fibers, gently swaying with the distant currents. Inside, a lone Atlantean figure is suspended in a meditative pose, completely still, their sheer robes settling around them like a drifting cloud of smoke. There is no sound, no television, no frantic activity, just stillness and light. You notice how the city is an integrated system. The structures themselves act as massive conduits for the water that feeds the gardens and powers the central core. Running along the exterior of every spiral tower are deeply etched channels, transparent tubes that carry currents of sparkling water like rivers flowing up and around the buildings. These are the arteries of the city, the complex irrigation systems that keep the deep-sea flora alive and breathing. This isn't plumbing, it's a circulatory system, a masterpiece of hydrothermal architecture that ensures fresh, nutrient-rich water from the deep is constantly being cycled through the gardens you saw and into the city's power grid. Your hosts, gliding ahead, gesture with a slow, sweeping motion toward the ceiling, the open ocean above. They are communicating the immense pressures this architecture is designed to withstand. Yet the structures don't look stressed or tense. They look relaxed, as if they are simply resting on the seabed, perfectly balanced. They were designed not just to repel the crushing weight of the miles of water overhead, but to distribute it, to absorb it, and to use the pressure as a means of structural compression and energy storage. You try to imagine the sheer scope of the mathematics required to grow a city in this fashion, and the sheer effort of thinking makes your sleepy brain feel delightfully fuzzy. You glide through a grand archway woven from interlocking red and blue coral, a material so dense it looks like polished jade. This archway leads into a quieter district, perhaps a neighborhood of artists or scholars. The paving here changes, incorporating small, smooth, rounded pebbles that glow softly, each one seemingly polished by 10,000 years of continuous, gentle current. You reflect that on the surface world, we build our cities to stand firm and unmoving against the wind and the rain. Atlantis embraced the current. It moves with the water, its buildings swaying imperceptibly, its light reflecting the rhythm of the deep. It is a city that whispers rather than shouts, a testament to silent, sublime persistence. Your guides pause here briefly, allowing you to run your hand over the crystalline wall of a passing structure. It feels cool, slick, and vibrates with that low, resonant hum you first felt at the gate, the quiet sound of 1,000 power systems working in perfect, timeless unison. You are perfectly safe here, cradled by the architecture itself. Your silent procession with the Atlantean sentinels leads you now to a space entirely different from the residential spirals, a vast open plaza enclosed by a towering crystalline dome that acts as a gentle, organic light filter. This is the heart of commerce, the gathering point, what the Atlanteans might wordlessly call the market of drifting curiosities. On the surface, markets are defined by noise, by the cacophony of vendors shouting prices and shoppers complaining about freshness. Here, the profound silence of the deep reigns supreme, making this the most relaxing shopping experience you could possibly imagine. It feels less like a market and more like a museum where you are occasionally encouraged to acquire the exhibits. Instead of stalls with heavy wood or canvas awnings, the goods are presented on smooth, floating platforms made of polished jade and bioluminescent fiber. These platforms hover gently, anchored to the seabed by almost invisible tethers of woven kelp. The Atlantean merchants drift slowly beside their wares, their posture calm and expectant. They do not hawk their goods, they simply present them, relying on a shared empathy and appreciation for beauty and utility to guide the transaction. You observe the silent transactions occurring around you. When an Atlantean wishes to purchase an item, they simply glide toward the merchant, gesture toward the object, and then extend a hand. The payment seems to be made via a brief touch, a transfer of energy or some form of biometric credit that only they understand. There is no haggling, no frantic counting of coins, only a nod of mutual respect, and the exchange is complete. Your hosts guide you slowly past the offerings. The offerings themselves are utterly captivating. One floating platform is dedicated to rare shells, but these are not the broken fragments you find on a beach. They are perfectly preserved, gigantic spirals of mother of pearl that seem to hum faintly. One merchant holds up a shell the size of your torso, and through the transparent curves you can see faint, swirling colors inside, perhaps memories of the deep ocean stored and preserved for the buyer to later meditate upon. Next, you encounter a stall dedicated to captured currents. Lying upon a bed of sparkling crystal chips are dozens of small, perfectly spherical orbs of solidified glass or resin. Within each orb, a miniature vortex of water is perpetually spinning, a perfectly contained current that never ceases. They are kinetic art pieces, little whirlpools of perpetual motion, used to focus the mind during long meditative drifts. You reach out a curious hand, and one of your guides gently shakes their head, a silent warning. Look, but do not disturb the flow. Finally, you reach a stand that clearly deals in sustenance. The vendor here is slightly older, their pearl skin bearing faint patterns of age, perhaps resembling gentle water erosion. They tend to their inventory with meticulous care, arranging small glowing packets of concentrated nutrients. These packages look like miniature, translucent sea grapes, each pulsing softly with its own internal light. The merchant senses your curiosity, or perhaps your stomach rumbling from the exertion of existing in a pressure-filled fantasy, and raises a hand in a slow, gracious offer. They present a single gelatinous sphere, about the size of a marble, suspended gently on a thin filament of solidified light. You understand the invitation. Without having to question the physics of how you ingest something while suspended underwater, you instinctively move toward it. The sphere dissolves immediately on contact, flooding your mouth and throat with a strange, highly concentrated essence. It is overwhelmingly clean, tasting like the purest mountain spring water, mixed with a faint mineral sweetness like crystallized moonlight. Most distinctively, it gives off an immediate, sharp tingle. It is not unpleasant. It feels like microscopic needles of pure energy tracing their way down your esophagus, followed by a rush of subtle warmth that spreads outward from your core. It is the taste of pure, readily available energy, a liquid light that instantly chases away any remnant of surface world fatigue. Your guides watch you, amused, waiting for your reaction. You nod slowly, feeling a sudden intense buoyancy and clarity in your mind. The Atlanteans clearly don't eat for pleasure or satiety in the human way. They consume energy and light. They offer another spherical sample, but you gently decline with a small, self-conscious gesture. You are already beginning to feel the deep, calming exhaustion returning, and you do not want to become too energized. You need to remain sleepy for the journey ahead. The market begins to fade behind you, the floating platforms and silent transactions giving way to a new kind of path. Leaving the quiet commerce of the market behind, your passage through Atlantis takes a turn toward the practical, yet even the necessity of feeding a city is handled with astounding grace. The avenues open up into vast, high-ceiled spaces that resemble sunken conservatories. This is the hydro-agricultural district, the engine room of sustenance. The structures here are less ornate than the residential spirals, favoring functionality, but the sheer scale of the cultivation is breathtaking. You are surrounded by colossal vertical farms, immense lattice works of crystal and living filament that climb hundreds of feet, supporting vast colonies of cultivated flora. Imagine a rainforest placed upside down and submerged, and you are close to the site. Massive stalks of kelp, thicker than ancient oak trees, rise like glowing columns, their fronds spreading into dense, nutrient-rich canopies. These aren't wild, unruly plants. They are meticulously tended, pruned and shaped into geometrically perfect forms that maximize light absorption and water circulation. The dominant colors are vibrant hues of ruby red and deep emerald green, interspersed with occasional bursts of sapphire blue, all pulsing softly as the algae within converts the filtered light into energy. Your guides slow their pace here, moving with a noticeable reverence, indicating that this district is treated not just as a pantry, but as a temple of life. You observe the ingenious methods of cultivation. The plants are held in place by fine, tensile filaments grown from the seabed, and they are fed not through roots, but directly through the surrounding water, which is constantly infused with trace minerals from the city's complex hydrothermal systems. It is the purest form of hydroponics, 1,000 years ahead of its time, where every element of the water, its temperature, its pressure, its nutrient content, is perfectly optimized. This is also the realm of beautiful symbiosis. You see no harmful chemicals or nets here. Instead, the farmers rely on specialized sea life to act as tenders and maintainers. Schools of tiny crystalline shrimp, no bigger than your thumbnail, drift constantly through the kelp forest, acting as miniature sanitation crews, feeding on any rogue parasites or dead filaments. Larger blimp-like fish, their bodies transparent save for a single brightly colored internal organ, glide slowly along the vertical columns, their movements creating localized currents that distribute oxygen and nutrients to the deepest reaches of the fronds. The Atlanteans interact with these creatures not as livestock, but as essential partners in the agricultural process, gently guiding them with light signals and low rhythmic taps on the crystal supports. You are led toward a section where a farmer, A serene figure, whose robe is woven with green and gold threads, is tending to a colossal, rope-like bioluminescent vine. This particular vine, thick and heavy, is producing packets of the same pure, tingling energy you sampled in the market. However, a section near the base has become overgrown, its excessive length casting a small shadow on a cluster of smaller, delicate blue mosses that need more light. The farmer pauses, their eyes meeting yours with that characteristic deep, silent kindness. They extend a hand toward you, and from a sheath on their wrist withdraw a tool, a small, curved blade made of perfectly clear, sharpened crystal. It feels weightless and cool in your hand. They gesture slowly, pointing to the point of necessary removal on the vine, indicating that the cut must be clean, precise, and quick, so as not to disturb the vine's flow of luminous sap. You hold your breath, concentrating, which is rather pointless given you are breathing water now, but the instinct remains. You carefully approach the thick vine, steadying yourself with a gentle push off the kelp stalk next to you. The bioluminescence of the vine intensifies right at the point you intend to cut, as if acknowledging the impending action. You move the crystal blade, and with a surprisingly soft snick, the excess portion of the vine is severed. Immediately, a thin, sweet cloud of golden, luminous liquid puffs out from the wound, dissolving instantly into the surrounding water. The detached portion drifts away, its light quickly fading as its energy source is cut off. You feel a strange sense of quiet accomplishment. The small patch of blue moss below, relieved of the shadow, instantly flares up into a brighter, happier light. The Atlantean farmer nods, a deep, silent bow of gratitude and shared labor. They take the crystal tool back, offering you an infinitesimal gesture of respect. You realize that in Atlantis, even the smallest act of maintenance is treated as a profound contribution to the harmony of the whole. You feel a satisfying, sleepy pull as your task is complete, and you are guided toward the next silent wonder. Your silent guides now lead you into a chamber unlike any other you have seen in Atlantis. A massive spherical space where the principles of engineering give way entirely to the philosophy of motion. This is the School of Currents, a place where the young Atlanteans learn to communicate not with gestures or words, but with the water itself. It is a classroom where the subject is not history or mathematics, but serenity, precision, and the art of flow. The chamber is vast, with walls of polished obsidian that absorb all scattered light, making the interior seem like a limitless black void. The only true illumination comes from the ephemeral, shimmering shapes being formed within the water by the young students, who drift in small clusters throughout the volume of the space. They are practicing the foundational skill of Atlantean life, hydro-shaping. You watch mesmerized as several youthful figures attempt to hold perfect spheres of water still in front of them, using only their mental intent to stabilize the fluid's surface tension. The younger ones are visibly struggling. Their water spheres wobble violently, stretching into ovoids or collapsing entirely into a shower of bubbles when their concentration wavers. You can sense their youthful frustration, a fleeting ripple of impatience that immediately manifests as chaos in the water. It's a beautifully visible metaphor for the human condition. The harder we grasp, the more quickly things fall apart. An elder Atlantean, the master of this chamber, drifts slowly among the students. They are the epitome of stillness, their movements reduced to micro-adjustments. They do not yell or correct, they simply demonstrate. With a barely perceptible shift in their focus, the master draws a length of water out into a ribbon, then twists the ribbon into a perfect six-sided spiral, holding the transient form absolutely motionless for a full minute before letting it dissolve back into the sea without a single splash. It is control achieved not through force, but through complete yielding. This is the central lesson of the flow philosophy. Atlantis understands that the strongest substance in their world is water, and you cannot master it by fighting it. You must understand its inherent movement, its viscosity, its inertia, and guide it gently from within. They teach that when a thought is stressed or rushed, the water responds with turbulence. When the mind is patient and calm, the water holds its form. Your guides, noting your fascination, drift closer to the teaching master. The elder figure turns their attention toward you, not with judgment, but with a silent, welcoming gaze. They present you with a subtle, wordless challenge, extending a hand to indicate a tiny cloud of sparkling, almost invisible microplankton drifting about 10 feet away. The message is clear. Move it. You accept the invitation, eager to try your hand at this elegant discipline. You focus, channeling your mental energy toward the little cloud, willing the water to push it. You summon all your willpower, perhaps even scrunching your face slightly in concentration, trying to mentally generate a current. But the result is immediate and disappointing. Because you applied force, the microplankton cloud immediately break apart, scattering violently in 3 different directions before settling back down, mocking your clumsy effort. You tried to command the current, and you achieved only disruption. The elder watches, their silent eyes holding a profound patience. They do not prompt, but their quiet presence suggests a reevaluation. You take a slow, deep breath, consciously relaxing the muscles in your forehead and shoulders that you didn't even realize were tense. You let the frantic need to succeed dissipate, replacing it with the simple, sleepy desire to simply observe the plankton. This time, you don't focus on the dust itself, you focus on the space around it. You imagine the slightest, gentlest movement of water behind the cloud, like the breath of a sleeping child. You yield your own intent to the water's existing motion, persuading it rather than pushing it. And slowly, infinitesimally slowly, the entire cloud of plankton begins to drift, not scatter, toward the destination. It is the victory of patience over exertion, of yielding over commanding. The master offers a slow, approving bow, a silent acknowledgement that you have finally understood the profound power of not rushing. You float away from the school of currents with a quiet sense of achievement, ready to apply that hard-won patience to the rest of the long, sleepy night. From the kinetic energy of the school of currents, you are guided into a place of profound stillness and stored wisdom, the great library of shells. This chamber is circular and vast, its ceiling arching high above you, supported not by massive pillars, but by a continuous, spiraling rampart made entirely of polished, hollowed-out stone. It is the ultimate expression of Atlantean knowledge architecture, designed to mimic the coil of a nautilus shell, the fundamental shape of growth and memory. The light here is subdued, coming only from within the shelves themselves, an internalized glow that avoids disturbing the delicate storage medium. The books of Atlantis are not paper and ink, which are transient and dissolve in water. Their historical records are preserved within the very structure of the deep, perfectly preserved ancient shells, corals, and spiral crystals. These relics are lined up row upon row, suspended in specialized crystalline matrices that allow the gentle current to flow through them. And as the current passes, these artifacts emit a low, persistent hum, a kind of subsonic vibration that holds within it vast streams of data, images, and sensory memory. The collective sound of the library is a faint, hypnotic symphony, a choir of voices singing a history so ancient it predates memory. Your guides usher you to a quiet, crystalline podium. One of the sentinels gently removes a large, milky white conch shell from its matrix and presents it to you. You understand that this shell contains a chapter of their history. Following the silent instruction, you carefully bring the wide mouth of the shell close to your head. The moment it approaches, the humming intensifies, bypassing your ears entirely and translating directly into soft, shimmering patterns in your mind's eye. You are watching the history of the fall, but it is presented with the same tranquility the Atlanteans lived by. It wasn't a sudden, violent cataclysm, as the surface myths suggest. Instead, the memory is one of a slow, creeping philosophical divergence. They didn't sink because of an earthquake or a divine flood. They sank because they gradually lost their perfect sense of flow, the harmony with nature you were attempting to learn in the previous section. The memory shows Atlanteans growing ambitious, trying to force the water to do things too quickly, expanding their luminous gardens too far, too fast, until the entire structural and energetic system could no longer sustain the tension. Their sinking was a kind of self-correction, a graceful, slow withdrawal into the deep to save the core of their culture. It is a mournful but profoundly peaceful lesson in moderation. As this profound truth settles into your sleepy mind, your guide silently gestures toward a second artifact, one far more delicate. This is the Scroll of Lamentation, a coiled cylinder of ancient, preserved sea papyrus, incredibly thin and brittle, suspended horizontally on two fine, almost invisible threads of glowing fiber. It contains the personal reflections of the last generation to live on the surface, recorded just before the Great Descent. This is where the cheeky reality check comes in. The guide encourages you to unroll the scroll slightly so you can sense the texture of the material. Remembering the careful movements of the sentinels, you reach out with the intention of supreme gentleness. But you are still a bulky, clumsy creature of the surface world, and perhaps the tingling energy from that marked delicacy causes a micro twitch in your hand. You apply just a fractional amount of pressure too much, and the brittle, ancient algae paper gives way with a soft, crinkling sound. Not a tear, but a sudden terrifying buckling along the edge. Panic, the quickest way to create turbulence, floods your mind. You freeze, absolutely horrified that you have just ruined 10,000 years of history. Before the small buckle can progress into a catastrophic rip, the nearest sentinel moves. They don't touch the scroll, but with a sudden, precise movement of their slender fingers, they generate a minuscule, stabilizing current of water, a tiny hydro barrier that crystallizes instantly around the damaged section. The buckle stops. The scroll is saved. The sentinel slowly turns their immense dark eyes toward you. They don't utter a sound, but their silent gaze communicates a depth of disappointed resignation that makes you instantly want to sink another mile deeper into the seabed. You withdraw your hand immediately, offering a silent, self-conscious apology. Clearly, your lesson in patience is far from complete, and perhaps you should stick to observing rather than handling the artifacts. The sentinels take pity on your obvious distress and guide you onward, away from the easily breakable past, toward the vibrant present. Your guides lead you now into the final, most breathtaking chamber of the city, the heart of the Atlantean world, known simply as the Central Plaza. The transition is dramatic, moving from the muted historical quiet of the library into a space saturated with luminous energy. This plaza is vast, shielded by a massive vaulted crystalline dome that filters and focuses the planet's internal geothermal energy, bathing the entire area in a light that is pure, warm gold, like sunbeams trapped deep underwater. All the spiraling pearl and coral avenues you have navigated converge here, leading inward toward a single towering focus, the Great Central Crystal. It is an object of astonishing magnitude and flawless perfection, a six-sided spire of what looks like pure petrified light, rising hundreds of feet from the plaza floor and piercing the dome above. This is not merely an energy source. It is the philosophical and spiritual anchor of Atlantis, the object often whispered about in the surface world as the legendary Poseidon's heart. The crystal pulses, not with a frantic strobe, but with a slow, powerful heartbeat of light, radiating a palpable warmth that permeates the surrounding water. This singular structure provides all the necessary life support for the civilization. It stabilizes the water's pressure. It maintains the precise mix of oxygen and trace elements that allows the Atlanteans to breathe their liquid environment. And most crucially, it generates the powerful currents needed to cycle nutrients through the hydro-agricultural district and the structural conduits. It is the source of the pervasive low hum you have felt throughout your entire descent, the resonant frequency of a perfect, sustainable system. Arranged in vast, concentric floating rings around the crystal are hundreds of Atlanteans. They are suspended motionless in the currents, their eyes closed, engaged in a communal meditation. They are not merely worshiping the crystal. They are focusing their collective intent, contributing their own serene energy to maintain the perfect flow of the central power source. The stillness here is profound, a deep, active concentration that makes the air feel thick with silent, collective thought. Even your own breathing seems to slow down instinctively as you become absorbed into the gentle rhythm of the space. You drift with your guides to the edge of the innermost ring, close enough to feel the distinct, subtle vibration emanating from the base of the crystal. It is a powerful, deep chord that resonates within your bones, a sound of stability and ancient power. The sight is magnificent, and for a long, quiet moment, you are simply overwhelmed by the beauty and ingenuity of this hidden world. Then you notice it. It is so subtle, so brief, that your tired surface world eyes almost dismiss it as a trick of the light. The massive crystal, which has been radiating a flawless, steady golden white, seems to flicker. For less than a second, the light dulls, turning a shade of pale, sickly chartreuse before snapping immediately back to its full, brilliant radiance. And the deep, reassuring hum that defines the very sound of the city skips. It warps into a flat, strained chord, a dissonance that scratches at the edges of the profound silence before the rhythm instantly corrects itself. You look instinctively toward your Atlantean guides. They did not miss it. Their body language, normally so perfectly composed and fluid, betrays a subtle change. The taller sentinel's pearl skin seems to lose a fraction of its luster, and their large dark eyes, previously tranquil, now hold a pinprick of focused concern. They slowly raise a slender hand, pointing first to the great crystal, then tracing an invisible line outward, along the path of the energy conduits you saw in the residential districts, and finally they point downward toward the distant, hidden network of pipes that feed the entire system. The silent message is clear. The heart of Atlantis is struggling. The disruption, however brief, signals a resistance, a blockage in the flow that sustains the entire ecosystem. The gentle problem that will now define the rest of your sleepy journey has been revealed. The harmony is broken, and if the crystal fails to sustain its perfect rhythm, the delicate balance of the submerged gardens and the air in the city will slowly, serenely collapse. Your hosts look at you, the clumsy, scroll-tearing visitor from the surface, with a silent plea. The moment the central crystal flickers and the hum of stability falters, the tranquil pace of Atlantis, while never frantic, gains a distinct, palpable tension. Your guides immediately pivot, their previous elegant drift replaced by a focused, swift glide away from the plaza. They lead you down a newly revealed ramp that plunges beneath the floor, guiding you into the operational nerve center of the city, the engineer's workshop. This space is utilitarian, yet still imbued with Atlantean grace. It is a vast, domed cavity carved deep into the seabed, lined with specialized crystal workstations and humming diagnostic equipment. Unlike the pearl and coral architecture of the residential zones, the walls here are clad in thick, seamless sheets of polished obsidian and titanium-infused crystal, designed to withstand the immense pressure of the external deep ocean. The light is focused and intense, a clinical white blue that illuminates every tool and every minute fluctuation in the environmental readouts. Here you are introduced to the Master Shaper, the Atlantean responsible for maintaining the perfect flow of the city's mechanisms. This figure is distinctly different from the guides. They are slightly shorter, broader in the shoulder, and their pearl skin shows faint, permanent patterns, microscopic abrasions and lines acquired from decades of handling dense crystal and focusing intense energy. They move with an almost frightening precision, their calm demeanor masking a deep, intense focus. The Shaper acknowledges your arrival with a swift, silent gesture of purpose, wasting no time on ceremony. They immediately glide toward the centerpiece of the chamber, a massive, hovering holographic schematic of the entire city. The schematic is a dizzying three-dimensional blueprint of all the integrated systems, the spiraling residential towers, the hydro-agricultural district, and the 1,000 intricate water conduits. It pulsates with various colors, displaying real-time pressure and nutrient levels. Most of the city is serene, glowing with a healthy rhythmic teal, but one section is marked by a deep, throbbing crimson. The shaper extends a long, slender finger and uses it to trace the path of the central crystal's primary intake line, a crucial conduit that draws deep ocean water through a high-pressure filter before cycling it into the energy core. The crimson spot is located far outside the city's main dome, at the intake filtration gate. Through a rapid sequence of precise hand gestures and slight tilts of the head toward the shimmering schematic, the shaper communicates the diagnosis. The primary deep-sea filtration seal is jammed. The shaper then zooms in on the crimson area, displaying an internal view of the pipe. You see a chaotic mass of material, dense drift kelp, crystallized sea salt, and perhaps a fragment of ancient pre-sinkhole debris that has fouled the mechanism, preventing the smooth, rhythmic intake of water. The central crystal is fighting against this blockage, causing the pressure to drop and the energy hum to strain and flicker. It is a problem of physics, not philosophy, but it threatens the philosophical harmony all the same. You look around the workshop at the specialized tools of the shaper's trade. They lie suspended in magnetic fields, shimmering with internal power. There are curved crystal cutters designed to sever biological obstructions, elongated instruments meant for microscopic pressure manipulation, and specialized sonar keys for opening seals. They are instruments of careful intervention. The shaper then turns their gaze upon you, the visitor, the one with the surface world experience of clumsily moving dense objects. The silent meaning is clear. The problem requires a manual external intervention. The blockage is too big for our internal drones to dislodge, and our delicate crystal tools might shatter. We need outside strength, carefully applied, to break the obstruction free and release the jammed seal. You have stumbled into the role of the city's temporary, clumsy maintenance worker. The deep-sea intake gate is far into the desolate zone outside the protective dome, where the crushing pressure is raw and unfiltered, and the true leviathans of the deep drift past. The journey is necessary, and the time for sleepy contemplation is paused, replaced by the need for focused, quiet exertion. Your assignment is set. You must journey to the furthest reaches of the filtration system and physically remove the debris that is suffocating the heart of Atlantis. The moment the Master Shaper finishes their silent communication, your journey shifts from a graceful, philosophical tour to an urgent, though still incredibly calm, expedition. You are immediately led away from the brightly lit engineer's workshop and into a series of low, structural tunnels that run along the city's massive base. These corridors are functional, stark crystal and bare bioconcrete, devoid of the pearl luster and decorative flair found in the residential spirals. This is the underbelly of Atlantis, where the raw forces of the deep are managed. The constant, reassuring hum of the great crystal begins to fade rapidly as you move outward, replaced by the heavy, palpable sound of deep ocean pressure. It is a dense, almost tangible rumble, the sound of millions of tons of water pressing down on the structural shell of the city. Your journey culminates at a massive circular archway, the final containment seal. This is the difference between the protected environment and the wild, untamed deep. The two sentinels who accompany you, alongside the focused shaper, pause at this massive gate. There is no opal here, only thick, black, non-reflective crystal. They perform a brief, complex series of hand gestures, and the massive seal slowly, reluctantly retracts into the floor. As the barrier slides away, the water immediately changes. The filtered, warm, buoyant silk of the city is replaced by something colder, denser, and far more viscous. It takes a conscious effort to glide, and you feel the familiar slight squeeze of the raw, immense pressure settling over you once more. The nitrogen rapture is gone, replaced by a keen, focused awareness. You are now traversing the shadowed kelp perimeter, the unmaintained, wild-growing zone that borders the city's artificial serenity. The protective glowing domes of Atlantis are behind you, and their light is rapidly shrinking to a distant hazy star. Here the water is dark, tinted with sediments and the tannin of ancient organic matter. The flora is not the manicured, bioluminescent beauty of the hydro-agricultural district. This is natural, untamed kelp, towering in dense forests of brown and black that stretch into the invisible distance, moving slowly and menacingly with powerful, deep currents. The shaper glides ahead, their light-focused tools emitting thin white beams that slice through the gloom. You are moving toward the deep-sea intake gates, which are miles away, anchored deep in the seabed. The atmosphere here is of profound awe and slight intimidation. This environment feels alive, raw, and unapologetically massive. You are no longer in a beautifully curated museum. You are in the colossal breathing lung of the planet. And then, you see the creatures that remind you exactly where you are. A vast, elongated shape drifts into view high above you, moving at almost a geologic pace. It is a gigantic, ancient whale, a leviathan of the darkest depths, its skin scarred by millennia of pressure and passage. It is not hostile. It simply exists, its colossal form blocking out the distant shimmer of Atlantis for a moment, reminding you of your absolute insignificance. Its movement is so massive that the wash of water it creates actually pushes you gently downward, a silent nudge from a being that views your presence with complete indifference. Moments later, you pass a complex of dark volcanic rocks that is home to a massive congregation of deep-sea squid. They are not the fast, colorful hunters of the surface, but translucent, slow-moving entities that hang suspended in the shadows, with their immense, powerful tentacles draped over the rocks. They watch you with huge, black, unblinking eyes that reflect the beams of the shaper's light, observing your small, purposeful passage with the stillness of statues. The Atlanteans, who rely on the city for life, treat these natural titans with a deep respect, moving quietly and keeping their distance. They know that here, the city's mastery of hydrodynamics ends, and the sheer, brutal power of nature begins. The shaper points ahead, indicating a distant, submerged structure, a massive circular intake pipe caked in black coral and swaying kelp. This is your destination. You have reached the physical point of failure, deep in the shadowed kelp where the water is thick with debris, and your clumsy surface world strength is urgently required to fix a problem of natural physics. The pressure feels like a glove, but you have no choice but to push on. You have arrived at the epicenter of the city's silent crisis, the massive circular mouth of the primary intake aqueduct, nestled deep in the untamed shadowed kelp. The entrance, a ring of reinforced dark crystal wider than a bus, is mostly obscured by a thick, calcified mass of organic and mineral debris. The culprit is immediately apparent, a massive, flattened sphere of tightly woven drift kelp, ancient petrified wood from the surface, and what looks like a colossal, sharp fragment of crystallized metal, perhaps a relic of the world that failed 10,000 years ago. This stubborn aggregate is wedged tightly against the central filtration grid, making the massive pipe entirely useless. The master shaper and the sentinel guides move with synchronized efficiency, gliding around the enormous blockage. The shaper uses a specialized tool, a thin, curved crystal wand, to emit a low, focused sonic frequency that you can feel vibrating in your chest cavity. They are not trying to destroy the blockage, but to gently loosen the calcification and salt deposits that have effectively glued the debris to the crystal lattice of the pipe. It is painstaking, slow, scientific work. Your role as the clumsy, heavy-handed visitor is brute force applied with Atlantean patience. The shaper gestures toward the base of the blockage where a small gap exists between the debris and the pipe wall. You are handed an instrument designed for leverage, a long, heavy rod of dense, grown coral, perfectly smooth and cool to the touch. The silent instruction is clear. Leverage the blockage out, but use continuous, sustained pressure. No jerks, no turbulence. The flow philosophy must be applied to muscle. A sudden, frantic thrust would only break the filtration grid and cause a catastrophic, chaotic implosion of the pipe system. You position the coral rod into the tight gap and brace your body against the cold, dark crystal of the pipe wall. The inertia of the debris is immense, locked down by centuries of sediment and the sheer force of the constant, unmoving water pressure. You begin to push. This is exertion in slow motion, an act of strength measured in millimeters per minute. You strain every muscle in your back and arms, willing the debris to shift, but the object barely trembles. The water itself resists your effort, cushioning your movement and magnifying the inertia of the blockage. It is an internal, silent fight. You cannot groan or grimace for effect. All effort must be focused purely through your body and the coral rod. You can feel the residual tingling energy of the market food being instantly converted into raw, desperate power. The shaper, sensing your sustained effort, intensifies their sonic vibration on the opposite side, attempting to find a resonant frequency that will destabilize the mineral bonds. Their movements remain smooth, calm, and utterly focused, a silent contrast to the internal screaming your muscles are doing. You push harder, breathing slowly and deliberately, trying to remember the lesson of the plankton cloud, not to force the water, but to persuade the debris through sheer, relentless persistence. time stretches out into a thick, slow syrup. Then, after what feels like a geological epoch, you feel the resistance give, not with a sudden snap, but with a deep, grinding groan that resonates throughout the entire structure. The debris shifts, releasing its centuries-long hold on the filtration grid. The crystallized metal fragment slides backward, the tangle of kelp compresses, and the blockage breaks free. The moment of release is spectacular and immediate. The water that has been silently accumulating pressure behind the blockage is suddenly set free, roaring into the aqueduct with the speed of a silent underground river. A massive, churning cloud of black and rust-colored sediment, the filth that was suffocating the city, erupts from the pipe, swirling around you and briefly reducing visibility to zero. The powerful sudden current pulls the dislodged debris away into the pipe system, where the shaper's tools immediately guide it toward the external ejector vents. You are momentarily thrown backward by the force of the flow, but one of the sentinels is instantly there, catching you with a firm, steady grasp. The entire process took perhaps 90 seconds of high-intensity, slow-motion labor, but the result is clear. The intake pipe is running freely, the water is rushing in, and the crushing tension of the surrounding deep ocean seems to slightly lessen, relieved by the free flow of the system. The shaper offers you a silent, profound bow of gratitude. The problem is solved, and the quiet journey back toward the light begins. With the massive chunk of debris shunted into the waste channels and the water flowing freely again, the heavy tension that settled over the shadowed kelp instantly begins to dissipate. The violent plume of sediment quickly disperses into the deep, and the water around you, though still cold and dense, begins to regain a quality of crystalline purity. The master shaper, their face unreadable, holds a small fist-sized crystal device, a real-time sensor for the central crystal's performance. They watch it intently. The silence that follows the exertion is only broken by the faint, rushing sound of the water accelerating into the newly opened intake pipe. Then the shaper's crystal device emits a sharp, pure ping of light. The crimson warning vanishes entirely, replaced by a perfect, steady emerald green that pulses with the rhythm of a healthy heart. The shaper's entire frame relaxes, the intense focus in their eyes dissolving into profound, quiet relief. The message is transmitted instantly back to the core of the city. The problem is solved, and the power is restored. As you glide back toward the massive, protective dome of Atlantis, the effects of your success become immediately and visually apparent. The distant light of the city, which had been hazy and slightly jaundiced due to the energy strain, suddenly sharpens into brilliant focus. The gold light of the central plaza floods outward, pushing back the encompassing darkness of the deep ocean with renewed, effortless power. The spiraling architecture of pearl and living stone seems to shimmer and vibrate with an inner luminescence, its surfaces gleaming with the iridescence of perfect health. Most powerfully, the deep, foundational hum of the city returns. The strained, flat discordance that had worried you since the plaza is violently replaced by a strong, steady, resonant chord, a sound that you perceive less with your ears and more with the fluid in your bones. It is the perfect low-frequency sound of the city running at optimal efficiency, a sound that vibrates through your chest cavity and settles deep into your core. It is the feeling of harmony restored. This is the sensation of resonance washing over your body. It is warm, comforting, and overwhelmingly peaceful. It feels like all the microscopic tension you accumulated during the difficult leverage effort, the clumsy near disaster in the library, and even the long, tiring day you left on the surface, is being gently but firmly smoothed away. The residual aches of that impossible slow-motion push dissolve into the comforting embrace of the stable frequency. The Atlanteans recognize this feeling as the essence of the flow, the sensation of being perfectly synchronized with the surrounding environment. You pass once more through the outer edges of the hydro-agricultural district, and the contrast with the stressed state is astonishing. The massive kelp stalks, previously glowing with a respectable but subdued light, now flare into intense, synchronized brilliance. The entire field pulses with ruby and emerald light, responding with palpable gratitude to the sudden surge of fresh, nutrient-rich water being cycled through the system. The tiny crystalline shrimp dart about with renewed energy, and the massive transparent fish glide with a more relaxed, gentle authority. The Shaper and the Sentinels guide you into the city proper, their pace returning to the slow, elegant drift of a people completely at ease. They look at you not just with gratitude for your strength, but with a profound, unspoken respect. You, the clumsy surface traveler, played a crucial part in restoring the silent, essential harmony of their world. As you glide back toward the center, bathed in the sharp, flawless golden light emanating from the now fully powered Great Crystal, you feel an overwhelming wash of sleepy satisfaction. The world is right again, and the deep, pure hum promises only restful stability. The powerful, pure resonance of the restored central crystal guides you back into the main residential spheres, where the profound relief is already manifesting as a spontaneous, city-wide convergence. This is the Festival of Tides, a celebration of equilibrium, fueled not by loud, frantic joy, but by the quiet, deep satisfaction of harmony successfully reclaimed. For the Atlanteans, celebration means achieving a collective peak of flow, and the entire environment begins to respond to their shared, tranquil delight. Atlanteans emerge from every avenue and spiral, gliding toward an open dome amphitheater built entirely of light-refracting crystal. The colors here are no longer the steady gold of the plaza, but a constantly shifting, ethereal wash of deep sapphire, rose quartz, and luminous silver. There is still no sound in the human sense, no shouting or clapping, but the entire water column pulses with a new, complex sonic texture. This is the music that is felt rather than heard. The central crystal, now resonating perfectly, sends out its deep, foundational hum, but this is overlaid with 1,000 nuanced secondary vibrations. These sonic frequencies ripple through the water, creating visible patterns of color and energy that wash over the crowd. You feel the bass notes in your sternum, a deep rhythmic thrumming that makes your internal organs vibrate gently. The higher melodic tones translate into shimmering ribbons of light that weave around the floating participants, changing color in response to the vibrational energy. It is synesthetic music, perceived by the entire body. The focus of the festival is the dancing, and it is unlike anything the surface world has ever witnessed. Utilizing the precisely tuned buoyancy of the surrounding water, groups of Atlanteans glide and spiral in flawless zero-G choreography. They are not constrained by gravity or effort. They are simply riding the subtle, controlled currents generated by their own collective will and the city's renewed power. Their robes, woven from gossamer phosphorescent filaments, leave delicate, temporary trails of light that linger for a moment before dissolving, painting abstract masterpieces in the water column. You watch them loop in slow, majestic arcs, spinning dozens of feet in one smooth, continuous rotation, or passing through each other's forms like threads through a liquid loom. It is the physical manifestation of the flow philosophy, movement without strain, art achieved through perfect control and utter relaxation. One of your sentinels, a figure who had been sternly focused during the crisis, turns to you and extends a hand, a silent, playful invitation to join the rhythm. You hesitate, remembering your previous clumsiness and your laborious surface world effort. But the collective joy and the overwhelming peace of the resonant music make resistance impossible. You accept the invitation, and the sentinel guides you into a simple, slow movement, a buoyant, deliberate horizontal spin. You are awkward and less refined than the others, your fins kicking out slightly too wide, but the water is forgiving. The feeling is exhilarating, yet calming. You realize that you aren't forcing the movement, you are simply riding the faint circular current generated by the music itself. For a beautiful, sleepy minute, you are weightless, effortless, spiraling slowly in the perfect, silent joy of the crowd. The Atlanteans around you do not laugh at your relative lack of grace. They simply shift their own movements, absorbing your slight turbulence into their collective harmony, celebrating the effort and the shared experience. This is their ultimate expression of gratitude, including you, the accidental hero, in the silent, fluid dance of their existence. The deep physical peace settles over you like a blessing, washing away the final remnants of fatigue and stress. You are no longer needed for maintenance. You are here simply to rest and to feel the quiet joy of a system in perfect balance. As the festival reaches its tranquil peak, the sentinel gently guides you away from the dancers, indicating that your part in the city's current story is complete, and it is time for rest. Gently guided away from the lingering, tranquil rhythm of the Festival of Tides, you are led down the soft, curving paths of a quiet sector, specifically designed for contemplation and repose. Your hosts, their mission fulfilled and their gratitude expressed, understand the deep, unique exhaustion that only comes from fixing an ancient hydrological system using nothing but surface world muscle and sheer slow-motion persistence. It is time for a unique kind of rest. Your destination is a structure entirely distinct from the rest of the city, a dedicated guest chamber for surface travelers. It is a massive, transparent sphere of flawless, double-layered crystal anchored not to the city's bioconcrete, but to a natural outcropping of luminous reef, allowing it to float slightly separate from the main architecture. This is your personal, suspended tranquility bubble. The entrance is a seamless circular waterlock, which you glide through smoothly. For the first time since your descent, the water recedes entirely, replaced by a pocket of purified, stable Atlantean-generated air. You emerge onto a floor of cool, dry, polished pearl. The air here is dense, pristine, and carries a subtle, faint scent of salt and flowering kelp. You instinctively take a deep breath, a profound, satisfying gulp of clean air that settles deep into your lungs, a physical release of the pressures of the submerged world. The guest chamber is elegantly sparse. The entire wall of the sphere is your window, allowing an unobstructed 360-degree view of the surrounding deep ocean. On one side, you can see the distant, softened glow of Atlantis, the gold heart of the central crystal, and the spiraling towers, like a massive submerged constellation. On the other side, there is only the profound, silent blackness of the ocean deep, occasionally pierced by the bioluminescent flash of a passing, curious fish. The bed is not a mattress, but a wide, deep hammock woven from fine, resilient fibers that glow softly with an internal, soothing blue light. It is suspended from the ceiling by thin crystal cables, designed to cradle you in near weightlessness. It's an instruction in rest. Even in sleep, you must relinquish the fight against gravity. You climb onto the hammock, and the fibers conform instantly to your shape, holding you in a state of perfect, buoyant suspension. Lying there, watching the silent, liquid night press against your crystal wall, the profound differences between this life and the life you left behind on the surface come into sharp focus. Up there, life is defined by noise, friction, and the relentless pull of gravity, a constant, exhausting battle against resistance. The architecture is rigid, the flow is turbulent, and the pace is frantic. Even sleep is often a struggle, a fight to turn off the mind. Here, in Atlantis, life is defined by flow. Effort is minimal, sound is translated into healing vibration, and the city itself is grown to harmonize with the deep rather than trying to conquer it. They spend their time meditating on perfection, teaching patience, and celebrating harmony. You reflect on your initial arrogant clumsiness and how ridiculous it seems now in the context of their boundless, silent serenity. You realize that the problem you solved was simply a physical manifestation of the human tendency to overcomplicate and jam the simple, vital systems of existence. The tiredness that settles over you now is not the weary, grinding fatigue of stress. It is the deep, healing exhaustion of a soul that has finally allowed itself to be cleansed and supported by the currents. The low, distant hum of the fully restored great crystal acts as a perfect subsonic lullaby, rocking your suspended hammock with the gentlest of frequencies. Your eyes grow heavy. The glow of the luminous fibers is the last thing you see, a calming blue that promises safe passage into the most profound, weightless sleep of your life. You are perfectly buoyant, perfectly safe, and perfectly at peace. You wake in the luminous hammock with a lightness you haven't felt since childhood. The deep, healing resonance of the central crystal has worked its magic, knitting together the ragged edges of your tired soul. The air in the crystalline sphere feels like spun gold, and for a long moment you simply lie suspended, watching the giant shadows of passing sea life drift across your transparent ceiling. The need for rest is gone, replaced by a crystalline clarity, and the quiet understanding that your body has finally been reminded how to simply be. Your guides have arrived, waiting just outside the airlock. They drift patiently, their luminous robes shimmering with the colors of dawn, a soft, pearlescent pink that signifies the hour of departure. You transition seamlessly back into the submerged world, the Atlantean water feeling like a familiar, comforting embrace once more. You move to meet your hosts, and the farewell is a moment of profound, wordless depth. The sentinels and the master shaper, who has come to see you off, line up in a final, respectful arc. They offer the gesture of acceptance again, palm pressed to heart, but this time the gesture lingers, carrying the weight of shared experience, the silent struggle against the debris, the quiet triumph of the restored hum, and the pure joy of the festival of tides. You feel a profound surge of reluctance, an internal silent ache that mirrors the feeling of tears welling up, a realization that you are leaving behind a world of perfect, effortless harmony for one defined by struggle and noise. You offer your own final awkward bow, a gesture that feels genuine and inadequate all at once. The shaper nods, their eyes conveying a gentle challenge. We fixed the flow here. Now carry that flow with you to the surface. The procession begins in reverse, but the journey back is not merely a repetition of the descent. It is a slow, measured ascent of memory and integration. You glide through the residential spirals one last time, admiring the architecture not just for its beauty, but for its resilience. You pass the great plaza, and the great crystal seems to blaze with an even stronger, purer light, thanking you for your service. The ubiquitous hum of stability is the last sound you willingly imprint on your memory. You move through the opal gates and exit the sealed perimeter of Atlantis. The vibrant, focused light of the city quickly shrinks behind you, receding to a small, bright diamond spark in the eternal gloom. You are moving back into the wild, untamed water, but this time the great leviathans that drift overhead feel less intimidating and more like ancient, slow-moving guardians, reminding you that nature, even at its most immense, operates on a principle of perfect patience. As you rise, the dense pressure of the deep begins to ease, replaced by the giddy lift of buoyancy. The watercolor shifts, accelerating through the palette, from midnight indigo to royal blue, and then to the hazy, ethereal cobalt of the twilight zone. You see the surface world approaching, not as a place of landing, but as a place of noisy chaos. Faintly, you can begin to hear the sound of the world above, the muffled whoomp-whoomp of boat traffic, the distant frantic siren song of modern civilization. The contrast is jarring, a sudden onslaught of audible turbulence after the deep, perfect silence. You rise faster now, abandoning the Atlantean water, leaving behind the density and the harmony. The air bubbles from your own rapid ascent rush past you, silver tracers pointing toward the light. The final separation is the surface tension itself, a shimmering, invisible membrane separating the dream from the waking world. You press against it, taking a final, deep, water-filled breath of the Atlantean way, and with a final quiet rush, you break through the tension. The sun explodes onto your face, bright and sharp. The air is suddenly thin and cold, and gravity instantly asserts its harsh, demanding grip, pulling at your limbs. The noise of the surface world, a shocking, frantic symphony of clatter and rush, hits your ears. You are back, but you carry the deep, resonant peace of the crystal with you, a quiet hum beneath the din. You are wet, clumsy, and heavy again, but you are flowing. Now you are floating at the surface, looking up at the sky. The weight of the world is back on your shoulders, but your spirit remains buoyant, sustained by the memory of pearl cities and silent, graceful kindness. The sun warms your face, and the last of the Atlantean water drips from your forehead. You close your eyes, holding tight to the stillness you found at the bottom of the world. The surface waves are rocking you now, gently, like a tired boat at anchor. The sounds of the world are loud, aggressive, demanding, but they seem distant, muted by the residual hum of the great crystal that still resonates deep in your chest. That low, perfect frequency is your shield. You are heavy again, pulled down by gravity, but remember the feeling of weightlessness, the perfect, buoyant suspension of the Atlantean bed. Hold on to that feeling now. Allow the pressure of the deep to be replaced by the soft pressure of your pillow, cradling your head. The colors are fading, the sapphire, the emerald, the perfect gold, dissolving back into the black canvas of your eyelids. Let the memory of the flow, the slow, non-straining effort, the silence of acceptance be your final guiding principle as you slip into slumber. You are no longer responsible for solving ancient system failures or mastering hydro-shaping. Your only task now is to simply yield. Release the tension in your jaw, let your shoulders drop, and allow your hands and feet to grow heavy, heavy, heavy. The surface world can wait. You have brought the piece of Atlantis back with you, and it resides here, beneath the frantic noise, a quiet, perfect hum. You are safe. You are at rest. Breathe slowly. Let go. End of story. Sweet dreams.